Greetings and welcome back to the lab. I figured today let's talk a bit about the engineering behind the Retro TV and the associated circuit boards so we can actually know why I pick certain numbers. So let me put these aside. We'll put this aside anyway. And this was the first board that I made along with this one. Now this is just actually, I'll just show you real quick. And this was designed to go sitting on this side. It's got two tiny little holes in the top there to hold an M2 screw, or a couple of M2 screws, so those should sit on there. And then the idea was that this was going to sit on top like this. I got to line up the screw holes with the actual tabs that are there to hold them. And so that was the plan, was it was going to look kind of like that from the back, but then in the front, all you actually see is a display. Well, as it turns out, I screwed up the first circuit board in not putting the switches on it that would allow you to emulate the knobs that are here. These are so small that I can't make them functional, not practically at a 1/6 scale. So my decision was to go ahead and put something on the back that you could then control. Well, I forgot the switches, so that brings us to this one, which is a different color because I wanted to distinguish it. Otherwise, it would be black, and this should still fit if I get it in the right orientation. And there's a little hole on the bottom here in case I wanted to put a potentiometer or something like that, or just run the wires through it. There's a tinier little hole there. So I was just trying to think ahead a little bit in terms of various things I could do. Well, as it turns out, I did it without, so this one now has the switches here, so that ultimately when you go to use it, you can flip the little switches here. And the idea was you could have up to 4 colors, and you could switch any combination of those 4 colors. So it gives you 16 possible combinations. But what we need to do is build an actual display out of this. And in order to do that, we need to figure out what resistors I'm going to put in here. And for those resistors, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 resistors. Let me straighten that out so I can zoom in and you can see 4 resistors for the 4 different color LEDs. So I have to consider the voltages that those LEDs take up, and on top of that, I have to consider that a 12-volt supply is not always exactly a 12-volt supply. So let's find out what kind of voltage I'm getting here. On to DC volts, it's center positive. So I'll put the negative here, I'll put the positive in here, and we have 12.47 volts. So that's a starting point. Now that's the voltage before I start loading it down. After I load it down, that voltage is going to drop a bit, but also once it's under load, the required voltage may come down a bit. It's a little hard to explain without getting horribly technical. So what I'm looking at is if on average your red, I'm going to do red, green, blue, and yellow. If the red takes up 2 volts and I have 4 of them in series, that gives me a total of 8 volts.